Hi again, and welcome to How to Teach English to Kids. Today I'm talking about the 11 years old kids and 10 years old. The fourth and fifth graders in primary school. And last time I talked about how to teach them about how to create your own story, and really it works. It really works. Teaching them story, new ideas, and I found them very interesting. Really, that I in here that I'm reading some important points. And number one is it's interesting for them. That's because they don't have to remember homework. Number one, and number two, they add their own ideas, so they would like it. And again, that the student who add the ideas, that just would remember his own idea. That's because it's when translated into English, from Arabic into English. And I always ask them to speak Arabic, the idea. Those who can't speak English, they would express their ideas, thoughts in Arabic. And I translated their ideas and write them on board before them. So they would look at the number of their ideas, their sentences, and would memorize them easily. And yes, in the number two in here, that yes, what's interesting and so wonderful, they could remember the meaning of the whole sentence. That particularly when they could know the meaning of one word in the sentence, they would understand the meaning of the whole sentence. So whenever I ask them about the meaning, they would tell me in Arabic. I read the sentence in English, and they would tell me the meaning in Arabic. They are very fast. They're so fast to remember the meaning in Arabic, but not the meaning of every single word. It is just the meaning of the chunk sentence, of the whole sentence. Yes, and yes, and gradually, the students, gradually they would memorize the sentences. But their problem is they can't memorize the whole sentence, directly or immediately. With the repetition in the first lecture, in the first exposure to the material, to the story, they would just remember one sentence or two sentences. Yes, and with the end of the class, if we don't finish the story, they would just feel anxious to know the end of the story. That's because I kept them suspicious, and I kept them anxious and eager to know the end of the story. Even I myself didn't know it, really but they were very sad to leave the class without knowing the whole story. And yes. And what's interesting about this method, for example, I raised 3 questions with many or several assumptions or reasons for each question each time, but they could connect the sentences. Give results to the first sentence, or just connect them to make their own stories, making their own stories. And the problems I'm facing. Number one, it is they don't know the meaning of the sentences. They just know the general meaning. That I read in English or they read in English. Well, although that not all of them they could read English very good. Some of them they could, but the others couldn't. However, they know the whole meaning of the sentence, but they do not know the meaning of every single word in the sentence. And this is really a problem. That's because they cannot create their own sentences on the different situations. However, and another thing, yes, they can memorize the sentences without the board. They just look at the board and can remember. It's just like visual and listening learning. It's not, they don't know the meaning, so they just look, they can memorize. I just to remind you, it is the first time I'm teaching them a story. It's not that they're doing well. Really, they're doing well. And so the recommendations, how to make it inherent to their minds or just making them memorize it. As you know that people who are traveling to countries, the foreign countries, on the different situations, they would learn and memorize whole sentences without the meaning of every particular. They just pronunciation. They could memorize on the different situations, and that's because they needed language. They needed to communicate to people. They needed to socialize with others. So they would remember the sentences. That's because they need language. But how to make them in my class need the language? Really, it depends on the kids themselves, on their families to encourage them, or just the teachers how to make them need the language. So teachers should be connected in their ideas and in their weekly plan or perhaps daily plan. They not should be separate or separated. They should be gathered just like one hand. For example, this class would teach this parallel, the other class would enhance it, and the other class would ask them a question about it. That would be what we call a series or a chain of teaching classes. Yes. And another idea, yes, the students would break the sentences that they kept or memorized in my story on the different situations whenever they needed new words to add. Okay, well, the repetition of this repetition of the same hearing, the same listening to the sentences, they would realize the meaning of these words which is just over time. Thank you very much, and I expect a new video with how to teach English to kids. Goodbye.